Have you ever wondered how a single idea can change the world forever? It's a question that has puzzled thinkers for thousands of years. The author Lao Tzu once wrote, "A journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step." This is a beautiful way to think about big changes. Sometimes the biggest changes in history don't start with a loud bang, but with a quiet thought in someone's mind. Today, we're going on a journey back in time over 2,000 years ago to a place called China. We're going to explore a story about a powerful idea that reshaped a nation and whose echoes we can still feel today, right where we are standing. This is the story of the Qin Dynasty. It might sound like a long time ago, and it was, but the story is not just about old kings and faraway lands. It's a story about people, about big dreams, and about how difficult it can be to bring everyone together. Before the Qin Dynasty, China was not one big country like we know it today. Imagine your school playground, but instead of everyone playing together, the playground is divided into 7 different sections. Each section has its own team, with its own rules and its own team captain. These teams were always arguing and sometimes even fighting over who got to play on the swings or the slide. This period in China was called the Warring States period, and it lasted for a very long time, almost 250 years. It was a time of great confusion and constant conflict, where everyone was looking out for their own team and no one was thinking about the playground as a whole. Life for ordinary people during this time was very difficult. Imagine trying to visit your friend who lives on the other side of the playground. You would have to cross through different team territories, and each one might have different rules you had to follow. They might even use different kinds of play money, so the coins you have in your pocket might not be useful in the next section over. It was confusing and sometimes dangerous. Families worried about wars, and farmers worried about their crops being destroyed in a fight. There was no single leader to make sure everyone was safe and that the rules were fair for everybody. But even in these difficult times, some people held on to a powerful wish. They wished for a strong leader who could end the fighting. They hoped for a day when the walls would come down and the different teams could finally work together. They dreamed of peace. The leader who changed everything was from the state of Qin. His name was Genghis. He grew up watching the endless fighting between the states, and he had a vision that was bigger than anyone else's. He didn't just want to be the captain of the strongest team on the playground. He wanted to unite the entire playground under one set of rules so everyone could play together safely. He believed that if all the states became one country, they would be much stronger and people would have better lives. He was determined to put all the scattered puzzle pieces of China back together to create one complete picture. So, how did he do it? It was a huge and difficult task. Genghis was a very clever and strong leader. He built a powerful army, but he also used smart ideas. He knew that to unite the states, he had to do more than just win battles. He had to convince people that being part of one big family was better than being in separate small groups. It took many years of hard work and struggle, but one by one, the other 6 states were brought under his control. For the first time in centuries, the fighting stopped. The Warring States period was finally over. Once all the states were united, Genghis gave himself a new name. He called himself Qin Shi Huang, which means the first emperor of Qin. This was a very important moment. He wasn't just a king of one state anymore. He was the emperor of all of China. To show that everyone was now part of the same country, he ordered that many of the walls that had separated the old states be torn down. Imagine all the fences on the playground being removed. Suddenly, everyone could run and play freely across the entire space. Now that the land was one piece, the first emperor, Qin Shi Huang, faced a new challenge. How do you make sure everyone feels like they are part of the same team? First, he created one kind of money for the entire empire. The emperor ordered that everyone should use the same round coins with a square hole in the middle. This made it easy for a farmer in the south to sell his rice to a merchant in the north. Next, he focused on writing. While people spoke different dialects, the written language had also started to drift apart in the different states. The emperor standardized the writing system. This meant that a message written by a government worker in the capital could be read and understood by another worker hundreds of miles away. Think of it like making sure everyone uses the same alphabet. This was incredibly important. It allowed the emperor's laws and ideas to be shared clearly across his vast empire. ensuring that everyone followed the same rules and understood the same commands from the central government. Finally, he even standardized the width of roads and the axles of carts. This might sound like a small detail, but it was genius. Before, roads in different states were different sizes, so a cart from one state might get stuck on a road in another. By making all cart axles the same width, he ensured that wagons could travel smoothly on any road in the empire. This created a superhighway system for its time, allowing goods, soldiers, and information to move quickly and efficiently from one end of China to the other. It was like building a national railway system, connecting every town and city. With the country united and organized, Emperor Qin Shi Huang turned his attention to protecting it. To the north of China lived nomadic tribes who would sometimes raid the farmlands for food and supplies. For centuries, the separate northern states had built their own walls to defend themselves. These walls were like small, separate fences built by different homeowners along a single street. They were not connected and had gaps between them. The emperor had a much bigger idea. He decided to connect these old walls, strengthen them, and extend them to create one single gigantic defensive barrier. This was the beginning of what we now know as the Great Wall of China. This was an enormous project, one of the biggest construction jobs the world had ever seen. Hundreds of thousands of people, including soldiers, farmers, and prisoners, were sent to work on the wall. The work was incredibly hard. They had to build in difficult places, over steep mountains and across vast deserts. They used the materials they could find nearby: earth, wood, and stone. It was a slow and tiring process, building the wall piece by piece, tower by tower. The wall was more than just a pile of stones. It was a sophisticated defense system. Watchtowers were built every few hundred yards. From these towers, guards could look out for enemies. If they saw trouble, they could light a fire to create a smoke signal. The guards in the next tower would see the smoke and light their own fire, and so on. In this way, a message could travel hundreds of miles along the wall in just a few hours. This smoke signal telegraph was a brilliant way to send warnings much faster than a messenger on a horse could ride. The Qin Dynasty itself did not last for the 10,000 generations the first emperor had hoped for. It was actually very short, lasting only about 15 years after China was unified. After the emperor died, his empire quickly fell apart due to rebellions and unrest. But here is the most amazing part of the story. Even though the dynasty fell, its ideas did not. The new dynasty that took over, the Han Dynasty, kept many of the Qin systems in place. They realized that the idea of a united China with one set of laws, one currency, and one written language was a very good one. The idea of China as a single unified country became the new normal. The puzzle was never broken back into its original 7 warring pieces again. The name of our country, China, is even thought by some to come from the name Qin. The first emperor's dream of a unified nation outlived him and his dynasty, shaping the next 2,000 years of Chinese history. The Qin legacy is all around us, even today. The concept of a strong central government that builds big projects for the good of the nation is a principle that started with the Qin. Every time someone in China writes a character, they are using a system that has its roots in the reforms of the first emperor. We have traveled far on our journey, from a time of chaos to a time of unity. We saw how the first emperor of Qin took a land of warring states and, with a powerful vision, forged it into a single empire. He created one currency, one system of writing, and built the Great Wall to protect his people. He put all the pieces of the puzzle together to create the picture of China that, in many ways, we still see today. His methods were sometimes harsh and his dynasty was short, but his ideas created a foundation that would last for millennia. His story shows us that bringing people together is one of the hardest but most important things we can do. It takes more than just wanting peace. It takes a plan. It requires creating things that everyone can share, like a common language or common rules that are fair for all. Now, I have a question for you. Think about your own world, your school, your neighborhood, or your group of friends. What is one idea you have that could bring people closer together? What small step could you take to start a journey toward making your own world a more united and better place for everyone? The future, after all, is a story that is still waiting to be written.